So how can we get people to take action? I mean, that has been like a timeless question. As a matter of fact, it was in the 1920s and 1930s. It's the reason why we're reading this book. And really, like, I have this always deep desire to influence people's lives for the better. And I know that you guys do here too, or you wouldn't even be picking up this book. You wouldn't be a part of our business leadership book club. And I'm super pumped to share some of the takeaways from part number 2. Anne-Marie, good morning, good morning. And Drew, welcome to the Inner Circle. So pumped to have you on the team. But we're going to dive right into the book. So here's the thing, when it comes to influence, it makes a huge deal, not only on the impact that we can make in people's lives, but how we can influence them to take the actions that we know are going to be in their best benefit, whether it's as a business owner, as a coach, maybe it's as a parent, maybe it's as a spouse. We really do want to help people achieve amazing and incredible goals and help them to be able to get out of their own way. And a lot of times it has to do with building influence, right? And that's really what this book is all about. So we're in part 2 of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And the way the book's broken down is it's broken down into part 1. We actually went over the first part of part 1 actually a couple weeks ago before I got sick. And it really talks about the fundamental techniques of handling people. The fundamental techniques of handling people. There we go. So we're going to dive into chapter number 2 of part number 1, which is the big secret of dealing with people. If you missed part 1, definitely hit that up. That's something that we did already previously. I'll leave it inside of the description below, but we're diving right into number 2. So number 2, he says, there's only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything. Did you ever stop to think of that? Yes, just one way, and that is by making the other person want to do it. He says, remember that there is no other way. The only other way, or the only way that I can get someone to do anything is by giving them what they want. I mean, this is such a critical thing when it comes to even marketing, when it comes to selling my kids on things. I have to get it to the point where my kids want to get up for school. I have to get it to the point where the client wants to take these actions. I have to get it to the point where somebody on social media wants to reach out to me and join one of my coaching programs, and doing it in a way where I'm actually selling it because it's what they truly want, and really being able to reframe it has been a game changer for me, not only in my business, but also in my life and also in my relationships too, because it's not about me, it's about the other person. He says, so many people are so hungry for a feeling of importance that they can actually go insane to get it. Imagine what miracle you and I can achieve by giving people honest appreciation this side of insanity. So basically being able to lean in and really make it about the other person and figure out what it is that they want, and then basically sell them on what it is that they specifically want, which is so much easier to sell them on that versus trying to sell them on what you want, right? He says, I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people, said Charles Schwab. The greatest asset I possess and the way to develop the best is that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. And this has to do with an alignment with the last thing that we were talking about for our last call. It's like, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Instead, this lesson is give honest and sincere appreciation. So being able to appreciate people for what they are, who they are, what they're doing, the actions that they're taking. There's always going to be things that they're doing that are great things that you can call out to. Even when we're talking to somebody and we're trying to build them up and we're trying to help them by giving them some type of constructive criticism, leading with that is always a way that I found to turn people off from not being open to it. But instead, leading with giving honest and sincere appreciation, not flattery, what he said, not making stuff up, but really honest and sincere, is really like music to people's ears. At the end, he says, Emerson said, every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him. He says, if this was true for Emerson, isn't it likely to be 1,000 times more true for you and I? Let's cease thinking of your accomplishments, our wants, and let's try to figure out what the other person's good points are. Then forget about flattery. Give honest, sincere appreciation. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise, and people will cherish your words and treasure them and repeat them over a lifetime. Repeat them years after you have forgotten them. That's why principle number 2 is give honest and sincere appreciation. This is one of those things where I see how it actually shows up for me in my life right now. Whenever I even get on a life coaching call where I'm teaching, I always make sure that I acknowledge and appreciate people for some of the actions that they're taking, because obviously what gets recognized gets repeated. And so if I'm acknowledging them for that, their brain is much easier to go into the heart space and be open to anything that I would share. Even if I decide not to share anything else, it's always best to start off with appreciation, because there's always great things that we're always doing. Can we agree on that? Like, even if it feels like our business is falling apart or something's happening with our relationships or whatever, there's other areas of our life that we are doing well in, right? And reminding yourself of that, or reminding other people of that, is such a critical part of how to win friends and influence people, okay? All right, chapter number 3. He says, I often went fishing up in Maine during the summer. Personally, I'm very fond of strawberries and cream, but I found that for some strange reason, fish prefer worms. So when I went fishing, I didn't think about what I wanted. I thought about what they wanted. I can't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangled a worm or a grasshopper in front of the fish and said, wouldn't you like to have that? Why not use that same common sense when fishing for people? This is like my mentor created something called the belief bridge. And this is like the belief bridge in action back in 1920, 1930 when this book was made. And what it's about is really, he says, it's the fine bits of advice ever given about the fine art of human and relationships. If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from the other person's angle as well as from your own. And how we do that is we find out what they truly want. I mean, this is one of the core principles that we follow when it comes to like marketing. Like, even if you look at my YouTube videos, if you look at some of the titles of my videos, it's not what I'm teaching in it. It's what I've heard people say, like, I really want X, Y, and Z. For example, I have a new video that popped out. It's actually doing really, really well. It's like how I got monetized so quickly on YouTube. And I teach some of the principles that I kind of like learned, some of the things the pitfalls that I came into. But in reality, the title of the actual video is like how to get monetized fast, my YouTube success story, because that's what people want. If I had led with, hey, let me tell you about these 3 buckets that you really need to like think about when you're making a YouTube video or a social media video, like, let me share that with you. And I put the 3 buckets that you need to have success on YouTube, less people would have clicked, because they're not looking for 3 buckets. What they're looking for is success on YouTube. And so really being able to communicate in a way where you're connecting to them and what they want will have them being open to learning what it is that you have. Because inside of the video, I obviously talk about that. And it's the reason why that video is doing so well, because a lot of people are like, this doesn't just apply to YouTube. This also applies to social media. And I need to really dive in to do this. So a lot of people have been watching it and sharing it, but it's because I led with what they truly want. And when you lead with what they want, they're more open to seeing like how you can actually help them achieve that, which is generally the program or the idea or the concept that you're selling them in the video. So he says, how we do it is we arouse. Principle number 3 is arouse in the other person an eager want by really focusing on what it is that they want and really leaning into that rather than making it about what you want to give them or what you think the answer is. And you probably do know the answer because a lot of us have been through that ourselves, right? But really finding out where they are in this specific moment in their time, in their life, and then figuring out like what they truly want. Sometimes it's called the curse of coaching or the curse of like going through transformation. And that is like when you get to the other side, you forget what it was like to be over here. I mean, you'll still have some of the thoughts about what it was like to be there, but you forget the terminology. Because in order for you to come through this transformation, you had to experience some transformation. You had to level up your personal growth. You had to level up the words that you used, and the where you are right now is in an entirely different spot than where you used to be. And so it's really great to actually have conversations with people who are there, because you can now pull back out the words and go, that's right. I used to think I just wanted to fit into my jeans, right? Maybe if you're a health and fitness coach and you're talking about all of these high-level health and fitness coaches and personal development and all this kind of great stuff, like that's you selling what you want to sell. But what if there's somebody out there who's like, I just want to be able to fit into my jeans? And by communicating that and then telling them and bridging the gap between this is how you fit into your jeans, and it starts by developing yourself. It starts by, learning how to, exercise and eat healthy, but also like what like they say, like garbage in, garbage out. It's the same with your brain, right? You have great stuff in, you get great stuff out. And you basically do sell them on what it is you have, but you have to lead with what they truly want. And that's why it's principle number 3. For the fundamental techniques of handling people. So let's go over that one more time. Number 1 is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. This will throw up the red flags for them, and they will be on defensive mode. Principle number 2 is give honest and sincere appreciation. Find something that you appreciate about the other person, even before you open up any other conversation. And principle number 3, arousing the other person an eager want. So identify what it is that they truly want and help them get it. Let me give you a quick example here, because my daughter was frustrated because she didn't want to wake up early. She's the kind of person where she'll, I put her down for bed at like 8:30, and she'll like stay up until like 1 or 2 in the morning. Like she's just wired to be a night owl. And then 7 o'clock comes and she doesn't want to wake up, right? And so before, I was trying to force her to get up, and I was forcing her by saying, we're going to take away your phone, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I tried everything, and it didn't work. And she was not getting up. And when she did get up, she would be like, have a upset, frustrated, like look on her face, and she would just upset for the whole entire morning. And so instead, I started to reframe and go, how can I figure out what she wants in the morning time? And so I had a conversation. I'm like, hey, you know what? We've been struggling with like you getting up early. And I know it has to do with like you going to bed. And I kind of haven't been handling this as well as I want to, but I want to ask you, do you have something that you would truly want in the morning? Do you have something that like would make you want to get up? Not only want to get up, but be so excited to get out of bed, it would get you out of bed in the morning? And she's like, well, mommy has her old Apple Watch, and I've really been wanting to track my steps. She's 12, by the way. She's like, I want to track my steps so I can see if I'm beating you guys during it at school. She's like, what if you let me borrow that? I'm like, interesting. I'm like, so if you got up at 7:15 and you were out of bed and dressed by 7:30, I will have that watch waiting for you and you'll be able to wear it that day. If you can't get up by 7:30, that's no problem. You just won't be able to have the watch. What do you think about that? She's like, that's a deal. Can I tell you, ever since, like, we haven't had as many problems with her getting up. Now, there is some times where she doesn't really care about the watch anymore, and we have to get more creative. But it was me selling her on what she wanted, and by doing that, able to get her up, all right? That's how this stuff like literally still applies today, and also applies in business, in personal life, but I always like to share relationship, children kind of like advice, because a lot of times we think that it's different because they're kids, because they should do what we say, and that doesn't work. Obviously, it didn't work for me when I was growing up either. And being able to lean into that, like, what does my boss really want? I get this question a lot. People are like, hey, I want to go in and I want to take an interview and I want to like excel in my police career because that's what I used to do for 20 years. I'm like, what does your boss really want? How do they want you to show up? Like, how do they want you to literally bring in the stories about how you've been able to like level up yourself while you've been in the field and actually practice for the position you're doing right now? You're actually doing the position already, right? They're just not paying you for it and you don't have that rank yet. But how can you go in there with I know what they want and give it to them, right? It's such a game changer when you think about that. Like, what are they looking for? And how can I literally paint that picture now? And it really did help me in that police career. Okay, so let's go into the next group, which is part 2. It's 6 ways to make people like you. 6 ways to make people like you, okay? Now, one little caveat here, and I heard it like over and over and over in every single one of these chapters, is not being fake. Like, not just doing it because you want to get something out of it, because that will be seen a mile away. And I really would agree with that. Like, you literally have to want to get people to like you because you want to be able to help them. You want to be able to inspire them. You want to be able to lead them. And if you don't have a desire for actually wanting people to help, it's just going to be all fake and it'll be a facade. All right. I just want to throw that out there because there might be some people that you're like, I don't want this person to like me. And like trying to force it is going to feel a little bit weird and awkward. So I want you to just really think about that in terms of when I do really want people to actually like me, this is the chapter for you, okay? So chapter number 1 in this one is this: do this and you'll be welcome anywhere. They say, so he had a conversation, and I have to set this up a little bit. So he was having a conversation with somebody about, let's see. Okay, no, he says, you knew by some divine instinct that you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Let me repeat that. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you have in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. This is that chapter. I was thinking about it. It was a different one. So basically what this chapter is saying is like, we are interested in others who are interested in us. So if you go into a conversation and you're making it about you, the other person really isn't as interested in you at that moment until you're interested in them. There's a conversation that he has a little bit here where he was like literally talking to somebody about biology. And he's like, I have no idea about biology, but the guy was like so into it and he was so excited about it that I got excited about it. And I started asking questions. And because I was making it about him and biology and the things that he loved, it really connected with him and he wanted to learn more about me. I think at the end, he said that the guy said, this is the best conversation that he had ever had. And he's like, I didn't even talk much. All I did was like ask questions. But really, instead of being interested in yourself and giving people advice and things from you, really being interested in the other person is a game changer. I mean, a lot of you guys I know are here are coaches or coaches in training inside of our life coach certification, or you've even been certified through somebody else. And really the power of questions is you giving the person the time and the space to like literally answer questions, but also they're telling you about them. And it's crazy, like when you do that, how interested they are in hearing about you. He says, if you want others to like you, if you want to develop real friendships, if you want to help others the same time as you help yourself, keep this principle in mind. Be genuinely interested in other people. Can you see like the flow of this book so far is all about focusing on other people? It's always focused on what they want. It's all focused on giving other people appreciation instead of criticism. It's really all about the heart voice is what we talk about inside of our life coach certification. All right. Chapter number 2 is a simple way to make a good first impression. He says the expression that one wears on his face is far more important than the clothes that one wears on their back. Actions speak louder than words, which is why a smile says, I like you, you make me happy, and I'm glad to see you. Which is why this entire chapter right here is all about like people wanting to seek out happiness. And he says there's one sure way to find it, and that is by controlling your thoughts. Happiness depends on your outward, doesn't depend on your outward conditions. It depends on your inner conditions. And when you smile, it's a messenger of goodwill. He says your smile brightens the lives of anyone and all who see it. To someone who has seen a dozen people frown, scowl, or turn their faces away, your smile is like the sun breaking through the clouds. That's why principle number 2 on how to get people to like you is to smile. Quick example of this one too. I went to DMV. If anybody lives in California, I don't know, probably like this all over the United States. It's crazy. DMV, you go there with an appointment, it takes you like 3 hours to get through the entire like amount of lines and sitting and waiting. And I remember getting up and actually when I went into the facility, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make whoever like helps me, I'm going to make them have the best day ever. I'm going to make them smile. I'm going to make them laugh. I'm just going to make sure that the DMV representative who's getting a lot of scowls, a lot of, man, can you hurry up? A lot of those negativity, I'm going to actually turn it around and I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to make it about them and also like tell them how much I appreciate them. And literally when I walked up to the line, you can tell like everybody was like upset. I think the person in front of me was like irritated and was like kind of like raising his voice. And the person behind me was also like kind of like chiming in of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I remember just getting up there and I just smiled. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry that these people are kind of treating you this way. You're like, this is just your job. This is literally what you're doing. And I just want to say that I've been watching you do it and you're meticulous with it. You're great at it. And I know that like all of these people don't even understand the amount of pressure that you're in with all the amount of people, this whole entire line right now. And everybody's like looking at you with a frown. I'm like, I just want to say how much I appreciate you. It was crazy what that smile and just that conversation did. I don't want to tell you it's a secret, but literally she finished it all. She's like, thank you so much for that. She was like very talkative. She wasn't talkative to the other people. And she's like, hey, just to let you know, I put you to the front of the line in the next line. And so I got to jump all of these people to the front of the line. It was not my intention to do that, but it's crazy what a little bit of like a smile can actually do for people when you're literally genuine about it, which is why principle number 2 is smile. All right, principle number 3. By the way, everybody who's here live, by the way, Amber, Julie, Ed, Anne Marie, love you guys for being here. Appreciate you so much. As we go, any takeaways from these? I'm going to get, especially at the end. I want to hear which one of these chapters like spoke loudest to you. Okay. Chapter number 3 is if you don't do this, you are headed for trouble. If you don't do this, you're headed for trouble. He says, Jim Farley discovered early in life that the average person is more interested in his or her own name than all of the other names on earth. Remember their name and call it easily, and you have paid a subtle and very effective compliment. But forget it or misspell it, and you have placed yourself at a sharp disadvantage. So, my name is Mark with a C. And 95.999% of people spell it with a K. And I don't hold it against them, but I got to tell you, like when somebody remembers my name and they know how to spell it, I know that autocorrect changes it sometimes, but when they remember how to spell it, it means the world to me, which is funny because it's like, in the big grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal, especially with autocorrect that changes it to K automatically. But I got to tell you that when people remember my name, it goes very far. Now I'm learning to like dive into this principle even more because I have trouble remembering like people's names, especially like when I have like hundreds of life coaches and like all these people, like personal relationships, it is harder to remember certain people's names. Obviously, I remember your guys' names here because we've been together for such a long period of time. A lot of you guys were in my first mastermind that I ever created, right? But this is one of those things that I'm going to be constantly working on is remembering people's names and then saying it, all right? He said, we should be aware of the magic contained in a name and realize that this single item is wholly and completely owned by the person with whom we are dealing and no one else. The name sets the individual apart. It makes him or her unique among all others. The information we are imparting on the request we are making takes on a special importance when we approach the situation with the name of the individual. From the waitress to the senior executive, the name will work magic as we deal with others. That's why principle number 3 is remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. I love that. I love that. I want to challenge you guys today. When you go to a fast food restaurant, when you go to a sit-down restaurant, when you go to buy something at a store, look at somebody's name tag before you walk up and even just acknowledge them, thank them using their name or saying hi and just saying their name. You look to see what happens when you do that. I actually try that experiment a lot when I go through the service line. I remember my kids the first time that they saw me do this, they were like, "Dad, you knew her?" I'm like, "No, her name is on her like tag. It's just so much nicer when you call her or him by their name." I hope it's a reminder for my kids to continue to do that on their own too. But just give that a shot, like literally by their name, like call them by their name when you're having that contact with them and just see what happens. All right, just see what happens. All right, chapter number 4 is an easy way to become a good conversationalist. Oh, this is what I was talking about. So this guy was, he says, an interesting conversationalist, why I had hardly said anything at all. This is the person who was talking about botany. He went into a party. Somebody was like really talking about botany. He was a botanist. And he just sat down and just had a conversation with him about botany, even though he had no idea about it. He was just curious about it and just asking questions. He said afterwards, the person said it was the most stimulating conversation that he had ever had. And Dale was the most interesting conversationalist. And Dale says, an interesting conversationalist, why I hadn't said hardly anything at all. I couldn't have said anything, even if I wanted to, without changing the subject, for I didn't know anything about botany and that I knew about the anatomy of a penguin. He's like, but I had done this. I had listened intently. I had listened because I was genuinely interested and he felt it. Naturally, that pleased him. He says, where's that? I went even further than giving him rapt attention. He says, I was hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise. So he was like going into the conversation and sharing and repeating back some of the things he says, but even like diving in deeper, which is a sign that somebody's actually listening to what you're saying. Like simply just repeating back is not necessarily meaning the person's listening or really interested. It could just be just like the reflection thing that people talk about. But really asking follow-up questions, this is something that actually helps me a lot with my daughter. So my daughter's, her love language is words of affirmation. And my son and Teresa is time, is really intentional time. And so when I'm able to like really connect with my daughter and she's telling me about an anime that she's watching or some type of thing that she saw on a video game or something like that, if I just, oh yeah, that's cool. There's a different level than when I'm like, oh, so like what level do you have to be to get that? Like, so this person did this, like, why did they do that? Like, why do you think when I ask questions like that, she gets more into it and she like really connects with me on a different level when I'm there asking that questions. Now I am asking that question because I'm genuinely interested, but I'm also asking that question because I want her to know that like when I'm having a conversation with her, it's all about her and I want her to feel that. And I do that by just getting deeper into asking those questions. And he said, that's why principle number 4 is be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves, not you talking about yourself. About others again, right? About others. All right. Number 5 is how to interest people. He said Roosevelt was one of the best people. Theodore Roosevelt was one of the most astonishing leaders in diversity when it comes to his knowledge. But he says, for Roosevelt knew, as all leaders know, that the royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things that he or she treasures the most. So principle number 5 is talk in terms of the other person's interest. So kind of like what we were talking about in the last chapter, where you're just actually getting curious about the questions you're asking, but also have a genuine interest in the other person's interest. So if you see, like my daughter, for example, if she's into anime, if somebody starts talking to her about anime, they are now instantly her best friend. If they start changing the conversation to what they want to talk about, they are not her best friend. I can tell you one of the ways that I get to my son is he's like frustrated or something from from school. He's 14. He's frustrated because of something that happened. And I ask him like, hey, like what level are you in Fortnite right now? Like, what are the new weapons that are out? Like which weapons did they vault this time? And I've had so many conversations that I have no idea what any of those things really mean, but I do know that he has that conversation with me all the time and he tells me about it and I understand it to the point where I can ask him questions about it. And it's me asking him questions about what he wants rather than just asking random questions or just like, hey, how was your day? Instead, I can ask deeper questions to really get him to really see that I am asking him about his specific interests, right? I'm not going to ask my son about something related to math per se, because that's not his interest, but he is going to be interested in video games or our puppy and things like that. And by really being able to connect with him on those things, it shows that I'm interested in him, and it also makes him interested in me because he will follow suit. And I've noticed that when I ask him those questions, he also asks those questions back of me, which is why principle number 5 is talk in terms of the other person's interest. All right, number 6, this is the last one for today, is how to make people like you instantly. It says, so he went in to get a stamp, and this is kind of like the DMV thing that I just shared. He went in to get a stamp, and he's like, the person had like a scowl on his face, and he was just like doing bare minimum to just get across. And so he said, when he gave the person the envelope to weigh it, he said he remarked with enthusiasm, "I certainly wish I had your head of hair." I can't necessarily say that. Well, I guess I can say that, but somebody can't say that to me, right? And so by literally marking with like a level of enthusiasm, finding something about the other person that he said, man, I really wish that I had your head of hair. He's like, it just literally changed the way that the person reacted to him. He said, I told this story once in public and a man asked me afterwards, what did you want to get out of him? And he's like, what was I trying to get out of him? He says, if you are so contemptibly selfish that we can't radiate a little happiness and pass on a bit of honest appreciation without trying to get something out of the other person in return, if our souls are no bigger than our sour crab apples, we shall never meet with the failure we so richly deserve. We shall meet with the failure we so richly deserve. So we're not doing this, or he's saying not to do this just because you want to like get something from the other person. We're doing it because we want to show honest appreciation. And when we do that, it's one of those things where it definitely reciprocates, even if it's not to you. Have you guys ever noticed that? You know, when it's like that pass it on thing, it's like you see somebody do something really nice to someone else, and then you'll in turn do something else to somebody else nice on the like an entirely different situation. And then who knows, like if you were to like actually take a bird's eye view and see the scope of like that little positive interaction and how that makes a huge difference, like that butterfly effect where like all of these other people, it can make a difference. I mean, I've literally seen that kind of stuff where it does make that huge ripple effect. Even people like doing videos about it and like seeing somebody help somebody across the street, and then that person goes and somebody drops $1, so they pick up the $1 for them. And that person takes the $1 and gives it to a homeless person, and that homeless person said, and it's like this really like huge, amazing thing that would have never been started if we had not been able to do that, right? So he says, the law is always make the other person feel important. So always make the other person feel important. So really talking about like appreciation, like what you appreciate. And he says you got to make sure that you do it sincerely. That is principle number 6. He says talk to people about themselves. Says Disraeli, one of the shrewdest men who ever ruled the British Empire, talk to people about themselves and they will listen for hours. That is awesome. Okay. So in a nutshell, let's go down 6 ways to make people like you. And then I'm going to go through all the comments. I see all these beautiful, amazing people who left me some comments here. You have a takeaway from today. I want to hear it, but I also want to hear out of these 6 principles, which one you're going to focus on this week. All right. So 6 ways to make a person and people like you. Principle number 1 is become genuinely interested in the other person. Principle number 2 is smile. Principle number 3, is remember that a person's name is to that person the most sweetest and important sound in any language. Principle number 4, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Principle number 5, talk in terms of the other person's interests. And principle number 6, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. All right, that was part number 2. Next time, which is 2 weeks from today, we're going to have part number 3 is how to win people to your way of thinking. I actually can't wait to jump into that. We're going to dive into that. But let's go back to some of your guys' questions. If you do have questions or comments that you have here. Let's see. I think you already said this. Drew is another one of our Inner Circle membership team members. We have a program here on YouTube where you get early access to behind the scenes stuff. You get to have just a whole bunch of ton of stuff, including a Q&A, a live one-on-one with either me or Teresa. She just joined. Welcome to the team. If you're somebody who's interested in that, check the join button. You'll see where those details are. Ed says, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see everyone. You too, brother. You too. Okay. Julie says, good morning. This book has brought to the surface some epiphanies for me. Getting out of my own way. Howdy, y'all. Julie, I want to hear. What are some of those epiphanies? What are some of those things that it brought up? All right. Let's see. Good morning, Amber. Emery says, I do that with customer service reps I speak with. I thank them for their time and listening to my concerns or the issue I was having with something. And usually I get a thank you so much. Emery, you do this very, very exceptionally well. You actually did it at our last event when we had the last coach event that we had. And you always have a way of approaching and making people feel like they're the center of attention and really like making it about them. So I love that you do that with customer service reps. They're not used to doing that. So are telemarketers, so are people. And in reality, they have families, right? They're just trying to do whatever they can to really help bridge the gap, to make money, to be able to, enjoy life, right? And so I never like to take it out on them, even if it's like a company or a problem with something else. Like, it's not them. They're just literally there to help do their job. And I love that you don't do that or you actually lean into customer service reps and appreciate them. Aaron, what's going on, teammate? What's going on? Yeah, Aaron, you get an AARON instead of an ERIN. I can only imagine. Karen, Anne, nobody gets it right. Aaron, Teresa, my wife, she spells her name Teresa. She either gets Theresa or Tracy. So you have to make fun of her when you see her and say, hey, Tracy. She does not like that. My daughter is always amazed by that. Okay, let's see. It's like when my son in his games and the books that he's reading, 100%. When you get into those, you'd be amazed at how they're more interested in what you're doing. Let's see. The simplest one of these principles is a smile. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what they are going through. 100%, Ed. That's one of those things where when you do lead with a smile, you can literally change their day forever, and like literally think about the impact that can make. It is really crazy just seeing what a smile can do. Let's see. Julie says, I started the name tag ID when we did 75 Hard. I love the reactions and taking shopping carts back for people. I love that, Julie. I love that. Love that. Okay, guys. Thank you for making it to the end of another book review. If you're not a part of the book club, definitely I'll leave the link in the description below. It's completely free. Or you can learn a little bit more about our inner circle. If there's anything that I can do for you, I am here to help. We'll go out with what Erin says. Erin says, making people feel like they're the only ones in the room. That's her goal. And that is giving, and this is giving me so many nuggets for doing better. 100%. Making people feel like they're the only ones in the room is a game changer. It's crazy how much influence we get when we make it about other people. I don't know if you guys have heard just from these last couple chapters that we've been talking about, is it's all about making it about the other person, because to them, they're the center of the universe. And I know that we don't like to think that, but as humans, we are selfish. We have this deep thing about like, what does this mean about me? Like even when it comes, especially when it comes to business, right? And when we can start making it about other people, it helps us not only to lead and to inspire them, but it also helps put and turn things around for them as well, right? So super proud of you guys for leaning into that. You guys are crushing it. I hope you're enjoying this book. I think we're about halfway point. We might have 2 more calls after this, and then we'll jump into our next one. But I appreciate you guys. You guys have an incredible weekend, and I'll see you guys real soon, all right? All right, bye, everybody.